Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Samantha Rank, and joining me today is Jennie Taer. She is an investigative reporter here at the Daily Caller News Foundation and has been on the front lines reporting about the border crisis. Jennie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, as I mentioned, you've been on the front lines uncovering stories about what's going on at our US southern border. And one of the stories you recently reported on was actually an exclusive for the Daily Caller News Foundation. The title of it was Arrest Warrants Count as ID for Illegal Migrants at Airport Security, TSA says. So, first and foremost, kick us off. Walk us through the details of this story. How long has this been going on? And are there any other forms of documents or IDs that can be used?
Right. So this is something that Republicans on Capitol Hill are really concerned about. Congressman Lance Gooden of Texas recently received a letter from TSA Administrator David Pekoski after he presented a number of questions over concerns over forms of ID that are used as alternates for migrants who don't have ID, so DHS documents. And before we knew that this was basically court dates, documents that gave them their court dates, and they used that as ID. And he wanted to know more. And what they told him was that certain ICE arrest warrants are allowed as ID. And so that's caused a lot of concern as far as who's coming in and how that's being vetted. Now, they said they use a number of databases. There's two different ones. There's a national TSA database to vet these names, and there's a CBP database. But there's issues that we'll talk about that, present, even more problems with that when you have so many people coming across and you have people who don't have identification necessarily with them. So they are literally only using a DHS document, and in some cases, a warrant that an ICE agent should be arresting them. Now, there's an issue where it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to be arrested. It has to be in a public place. It has to be by an ICE agent. But basically, what that document means is that person is deemed needing to be removed from the country, and they are using that to take a commercial airline flight to go further north.
That is crazy. That last part you mentioned, how they can, basically get on a plane and fly, into the interior of the United States. I mean, what happens then? Are they just, assuming that they don't show up for their court date, just essentially gone into the interior of the United States?
Right. So that's obviously a concern. And they have 159 people on average per day using this process. That's according to this letter. So you can imagine, not only are we having a surge at the border, but we're seeing this surge go further north. I've seen it in places like Houston, where I've done reporting with the Texas Department of Public Safety. Criminal activity is going further north. It's causing problems in American communities. And we've done reporting on that, and we'll continue to do that. The problem really is that when these documents are issued by ICE or by Border Patrol in other DHS document cases that they accept, migrants who don't have IDs, typically a lot of them dump their IDs on the way to the US when they're crossing the border, and you see that along the border, different passports and IDs from all over the world. Border Patrol and ICE have to essentially take them at their word, and the US Customs and Border Protection has told me this, that if they don't have a name on an official government ID, then they really do have to take them at their word for who they say they are. And sometimes if a name comes up and it's pinged on a certain database, some of them will even say that they go by a different name. Fortunately, they do run both names, and they make sure that the person is vetted through both forms of identification. But you can see that there's obviously issues with that, and definitely concerns over what the history of a person is who you really don't know who they are.
So you talked a little bit about Rep. Gooden and what he's doing in terms of sort of questioning DHS Secretary Mayorkas. Is there any other pushback going on from Republicans specifically?
Yeah, they've introduced legislation to end this process. And so I think that's something they want to move towards. I don't know the likelihood of that passing, but they definitely are concerned about it. And, you know, it's definitely come up from a number of different sources of mine that they're concerned. They've brought it up in local public safety meetings. It's a problem because you're seeing a rise in crime at the border. You're seeing a rise in crossings and encounters. You're seeing a rise in fentanyl seizures, which obviously poses a grave national security threat. I've been down to the border with the Texas Department of Public Safety as part of Operation Lone Star, where they've stepped in where the federal government hasn't. And they're seeing, you know, they're intercepting human smuggling attempts. They're intercepting cash smuggling. They're intercepting drug smuggling. It's absolutely insane, the level of seizures. They've made over 10,000 criminal arrests. They've seized enough fentanyl to kill over 200 million people. It's just unfathomable. So someone has to take action, absolutely. So we'll be following that.